Hi, I'm Daryl Rainey from Progressive Realty Group here in Simcoe. The building behind me is home to Millards Chartered Professional Accountants. But did you know that it was initially built as the Simcoe Armoury? Throughout its nearly 90-year history as an armory, it was an important community building. It was a place to recruit cadets, train troops, and host community events. My great-grandfather, Herman Sewell, and his orchestra even played an event here in the 1930s. In this episode of Building History, our pal Josh from the Norfolk County Archives shares some of the history of one of Simcoe's grand old buildings.
The Simcoe Armories is on the northeast corner of Robinson and Talbot Street. The construction began in September of 1913 and was finished by September of 1914. So actually quite a quick turnaround really when you think about how large the structure is for it to be built in 1 year at that time. It's a large red brick structure on a large cement concrete foundation. It's got large steel trusses for the roof and beautiful maple floors on the interior. There's 3 rooms upstairs, which were for the officers' quarters and recreation spaces. And then in the basement, there's a 75-foot shooting gallery, actually. The shooting range, as far as we know, was used right up until the 1970s. Then they realized their bullets were too powerful for the steel plate, so they had to stop using it by 1973. Yeah, the Simcoe Armory building was a really important building for Norfolk County. Previously there was no armory, they just simply used flimsy drill shed, and they used that for nearly 50 years before the armory was actually constructed. So it had a really important presence. The armory cost $35,000 to construct, which the military at the time said was the best structure built for the money. And you know, there was a real movement from around 1896 all the way until about 1918 to build armories. Over 100 armories were built all over Canada, and so some of those were in Brantford, another one was built in Hamilton, and so Simcoe finally got their armory by 1914. The opening ceremony was a really big deal. 2,000 people attended the opening ceremony. The management of the armory were totally unprepared for such a huge attendance. There was an orchestra, there were choir performances, they had decorated the hall with flowers and evergreens and flags. And when they had more people attend than they expected, they had to run down the street to the Canadian canners and get some large planks and boxes to create additional seating for all the people who arrived. So it was quite an important event in Simcoe, and there was speeches from several different dignitaries. And at one of those speeches, they mentioned how the space will be used as a public space for any event in patriotic nature. And that was true. The armory is named after Sergeant Fredrick Hobson, who was a resident of Simcoe. He enlisted into the First World War in 1915. The story of Hobson's a really heroic story. Happened in World War I. He and his contingent were moving into no man's land and crossing in over closer to the German line. A lot of his contingent was killed during their bombings, and there was one Lewis gun that he found that was buried in rubble. He and his partner dug out the gun in order to keep the Germans off from approaching. What happened though was the gun got jammed, and so in order for his partner to fix the gun, Hobson ran out into the line of fire to keep the Germans back while his partner fixed the Lewis gun. And he ultimately did fix the Lewis gun, but Hobson died in his efforts. He was awarded the Victoria Cross for his brave efforts during his last final moments. He's believed to be the only Norfolk County resident that has been awarded the Victoria Cross. Well, there was one dramatic event where there was a fire upstairs in 1947, likely caused by a cigarette. So that's about it. There was a lot of World War I and World War II memorabilia that were lost in that fire. So during both World Wars and the Korean War, it was used as an active military base. Then it was later used as training, recruitment, and a community space for other types of events. During the First World War, it was the home of Norfolk's own 133rd Battalion. The building was used during the Second World War by the 41st and 42nd Batteries, Royal Canadian Artillery. From 1970 to 2002, it housed the 56th Field Regiment and the 69th Field Battery and the 2853 Royal Canadian Cadet Corps. So in the early 2000s, it was determined that the armories needed to move locations. They needed more space, they needed a more modern facility, and so eventually it was decided in 2001 to build a brand new facility on Grigg Drive. That building was finalized in 2002, and so in June 2002, there was a large celebration, a large parade, where the local regiment, along with the Legion and the cadets, all marched to their new location on Grigg Drive. The new armory adopted the old armory's designation as the Sergeant Fredrick Hobson VC Armory. So the name continued with the new facility, and as well, during that large ceremony, they took the Victoria Cross that was at the original armory and moved it over to the new building. Today, the old Simcoe Armories building is the home of Millards accounting firm and was sold to them in 2003.
I think what drew us to the building definitely was the historical significance and the ties to the community. You know, generations of men and women came through these doors to fight world wars or to train as cadets or reservists, so that was a big draw. It was a big open space, so we had to add basically a second floor that went around, you know, the perimeter of the building, and we had to add all of the internal offices and the outside offices, so that really changed the look of the building inside. What we tried to preserve were the windows, beautiful shapes to the windows. Well, we had to get new glass and framing, but the shape of the windows reflects what would have been originally built here. Millards is an accounting firm that's been in this area since the 1940s, and we've been ever expanding. We take care of a lot of farming clients, small businesses, big corporations, and we service quite a variety of businesses that we take care of.
In a time when many businesses choose to build new instead of restoring old, it's refreshing to see businesses like Millards commit to preserving a building like the old Simcoe Armory. The work they put into their Simcoe office will ensure that an important part of Simcoe's history is never lost. If you're looking to move in and around the Simcoe area, be sure to contact us at progressiverealtygroup.ca, your hometown realtor.